Tonight, we are going to walk together through some very old and very gentle wisdom, teachings that have been passed down for thousands of years, from teacher to student, from heart to heart, in quiet monasteries and beneath wide open skies. These are teachings from the Buddhist tradition and from the lineage of Zen, about something that already belongs to you, something you do not need to earn or build or chase. Freedom. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The freedom we will explore tonight is not the kind of freedom that comes from getting everything right or from finally arriving somewhere you have been trying to reach, but a quieter kind. The freedom of simply being who you already are. The freedom of letting life be exactly as it is and discovering that this is enough. So as we walk through ancient teachings, you do not need to seek anything at all. You only need to rest and to listen and to let these gentle stories and teachings wash over you like warm water. There is nothing to fix, nothing to solve, only this quiet moment and the sound of these words carrying you softly towards sleep. Relax, take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey together. There is an ancient teaching in Buddhism that says the path to awakening is not only found in meditation halls or in the silence of mountain retreats. It is also found in the very ordinary activities of our daily lives, in the way we wash a dish, in the way we speak to a stranger, in the way we do our work. The Buddha taught that right livelihood, the care and intention we bring to whatever we do each day, is one of the steps along the noble path to freedom. Not because certain jobs are holy and others are not, but because the spirit we bring to any task is what makes it sacred. Tonight, as you settle in, let this idea rest gently with you. You do not need to do anything grand or remarkable to live a meaningful life. You only need to bring your full heart to whatever is in front of you. And in doing so, something quiet and beautiful begins to happen. The work itself becomes a kind of prayer. In certain Zen monasteries, before the monks and nuns sit down to eat their simple meal, they pause and offer a chant of gratitude. But it is not only gratitude for the food. It is gratitude for every labor that brought the food into being. The labor of the rain that fell on the fields. The labor of the earthworms, turning the soil in the dark. The labor of the hands that planted the seeds and the hands that harvested the grain under the wide sun. The labor of those who carried the harvest to market and those who prepared the meal with care and attention. Even the labor of the earth herself, holding all of it, supporting all of it, asking for nothing in return. It is a beautiful practice, and it reminds us of something we so easily forget, that nothing in our lives arrives without the quiet work of countless others, that we are held, always, by a web of generosity so vast we can barely see its edges, and that our own work, whatever it may be, is part of that same web. Our small labors matter. They ripple outward in ways we may never fully know. The Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it in some way." And this is really what right livelihood means. Not just avoiding harm, though that is part of it. The ancient texts say that we should not engage in work that brings suffering to others. But more deeply, right livelihood is about remembering why we are here. It is about offering the work of our hands and our hearts as a gift. Not because we are supposed to, but because something in us longs to give. Something in us already knows that this is what makes a life feel whole. Let us explore a story about this. It is an old tale, set long ago. A traveler was walking through a town in the countryside where a great project was underway. He came upon a wide yard filled with stone, where workers were cutting and shaping large blocks beneath the open sky. The sound of chisels rang through the air. Dust floated in the late afternoon light. The smell of cut stone and sweat hung over everything. The traveler approached the first worker, a man with tired eyes and stone dust in his hair, sitting on an overturned bucket in a patch of shade. He asked him gently, "Tell me, friend, what are you doing here?" The man barely looked up. His voice was flat and heavy, like the stones themselves. "What does it look like?" he said. "I am cutting stones. I break them into smaller pieces and shape them all day long. My back aches. My hands are sore. When the sun goes down, I stop. When the sun comes up, I start again. It is the same thing, day after day after day. That is what I am doing." The traveler could feel the weariness in the man's words, the way a life can feel like a weight when we cannot see the meaning in it. He thanked him quietly and walked on. He stepped over piles of rubble and rough-cut blocks, past wheelbarrows and tools leaning against half-built walls, until he reached a second worker further along the yard. This woman had a steadier rhythm to her work, a kind of quiet competence in the way she held her tools. She set down her chisel and wiped her brow when the traveler asked the same question. "What am I doing?" she said, and a small, warm smile crossed her face. "I am providing for my family. With the wages from this work, my children can attend school. We have built a good home together, with a warm hearth and enough food on the table. My daughter is learning to read, and my son wants to be a musician." She laughed softly. "I am grateful for this work. It is hard, yes, but it gives us a good life. That is what I am doing here." The traveler could feel the love in her words, the way even difficult work can be softened when it is in service of something we care about. He thanked her too, and continued deeper into the stone yard, past great columns of marble and half-finished arches leaning against wooden frames. The light was growing golden now, the afternoon stretching long. And there, near the far edge of the yard, he found a third worker. This man was bent over a block of stone, carving with extraordinary care, as if every stroke of the chisel mattered. When the traveler asked his question, the man straightened up, and his face broke into a wide, beaming smile. "What am I doing?" he said, his eyes bright. "I am building a cathedral. It will take many lifetimes to complete, perhaps 1,000 years. I will never see it finished. But this stone, this one right here, this is my stone, and it will be part of something beautiful long after I am gone." The traveler stood quietly for a moment, looking at the man's face, and understood something he had not understood before. All three workers were doing the same task. The same dust, the same sun, the same aching hands. But the spirit within each one was entirely different. And it was that spirit, not the stone, that determined whether the work was a burden, a livelihood, or a cathedral. This is what the ancient teachers point us toward again and again. It is not the work itself that frees us or traps us. It is the quality of heart we bring to it. A wise monk who was also a gifted writer once reflected on this truth. He had spent many years in a quiet monastery, and yet his books were read by people all over the world. He noticed something interesting about his own work. When he wrote from the deepest place in himself, when the writing came from something beyond his own ambition, From a place of genuine love for the world and the people in it, the words seemed to reach others in ways he could not have planned. They touched something real. They carried a kind of warmth and aliveness that he could not manufacture or control. It was as if the words had a life of their own, a spirit that traveled far beyond anything he had intended. But when he wrote only to impress, or only to advance his reputation, something hollow crept in. The words might still be clever. They might still attract attention for a time, but they had lost their light. They were like lanterns without a flame inside. Beautiful containers perhaps, but cold and dark. He put it simply, when you offer your work from the deepest place in your heart, it reaches others and brings them joy. When you offer it only for yourself, you will read what you have made, and after a short while, you will feel empty. Because the spirit was missing. And it is always the spirit that people receive, even more than the words or the work itself. This is a beautiful teaching for all of us, not only for writers. For anyone who cooks a meal, or teaches a child, or builds something with their hands, or tends to someone in need. The question is never really about what you are doing. The question is always about who you are being while you do it. A great teacher of peace once said that if a person sweeps streets for a living, they should sweep the way the great painters painted, the way the great sculptors shaped marble, the way the great poets wrote their verses, the way the great composers made their music. Sweep so well, he said, that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a sweeper who did their work well. It is not the broom. It is not the street. It is the dignity and the beauty and the grace that you bring to it. And this kind of grace is available to everyone. It does not require wealth or status or a particular kind of job. It only requires that you remember what you already know in your heart, that your work, whatever it is, can be your cathedral. And yet, one of the quiet sorrows of being human is that sometimes we cannot give our gifts. Sometimes circumstances make it difficult. Sometimes we find ourselves in seasons of life where the doors seem closed, where the world feels narrow, where we cannot seem to find the place where we belong. And that is a genuinely painful thing, because we are each born with something beautiful in us that wants to be offered. Like a ship that was built to carry cargo across the sea, we feel it when we cannot make the crossing. Something in us aches when we cannot give. If you have ever felt this way, know that you are not alone, and that this feeling itself is a sign of something good in you. It is the proof that your heart is alive. It is your spirit asking to be used. And even in the most constrained circumstances, there are always quiet, humble, powerful ways to share what you carry. The Buddha understood this ache. He spent years searching for the truth, sitting beneath trees, wandering through forests, questioning everything. And when he finally found what he was looking for, that deep, still freedom at the center of all things, he did not keep it for himself. He rose from his seat beneath the Bodhi tree and walked the dusty roads for decades, sharing what he had discovered with anyone who would listen. Farmers, merchants, kings, and children alike. Because he knew that wisdom that is not given away is wisdom that has not yet been fully realized. To awaken is to give. To give is to awaken. They are two expressions of the same generous heart. And so, if you find yourself in a time when the work you long to do is not available to you, remember this. There are always ways to give. You can offer a kind word to someone who is struggling. You can sit quietly with a friend who needs company. You can teach something you know to someone who wants to learn. You can tend a garden, or care for an animal, or simply listen, truly listen, to another person's story. The gift does not need to be large. Sometimes the most powerful offering is simply your presence, your attention, your willingness to be there. There is a saying in the Zen tradition, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The task does not change, but the heart that does the task is transformed. And that transformation is felt by everyone around you, even if no words are spoken. Let us explore one more story about this, because stories have a way of reaching places that teachings alone sometimes cannot. There was once a young man who had lived a very hard life. He had grown up in a rough part of a large city, surrounded by trouble and danger. By the time he was a teenager, he had already been in more trouble than most people see in a lifetime. He had been in and out of difficult situations many times, lost touch with his family, and had very little reason to believe that anyone in the world saw anything good in him. Eventually, he found his way to a small community center run by a kind and patient elder. This elder had spent many years working with young people from the toughest parts of the city. He had seen a great deal of suffering and failure and heartbreak. And he had also seen, again and again, the astonishing capacity of the human spirit to begin again. The young man came in one morning, sullen and guarded, his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting trouble. He sat down heavily in a chair across from the elder and waited for the lecture. He had heard it all before. The disappointment, the list of failures, the tired advice. The elder poured 2 cups of tea and slid one across the table. He sat quietly for a moment, studying the young man's face. He could see the posturing, the hardness, the walls this young man had built around himself over many difficult years. But he was old enough and wise enough to recognize something beneath all of that. Something soft, something brave, something still very much alive. So instead of scolding him, instead of listing all the ways he had gone wrong, the elder tried something different. He leaned forward slightly, looked the young man in the eye, and spoke in a voice that was firm but extraordinarily gentle. "Do you know how much courage it takes to walk through that door?" he said. "After everything that has happened, after all the setbacks and the confusion, you got up this morning and you came here. Do you have any idea how brave that is?" The young man blinked. He had not expected this. "The courage you are showing right now," the elder continued, "in wanting to try again, in wanting to build something new, that is real courage. It is not the kind of courage that makes noise. It is the quiet kind, the kind that matters most. And I want you to know something." The elder paused. "You are extraordinary. I mean that with all my heart." The young man stared at him. His jaw loosened slightly. The hardness in his eyes softened, just a fraction, like ice beginning to thaw at the edge of a frozen lake. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. No one had ever looked past the mistakes and the anger and the rough exterior and seen something worth honoring. The room was very still. Outside, traffic hummed. Somewhere, a bird called. And then, very softly, the young man said, "I am going to carry those words with me forever. Right here." And he placed his hand over his heart. In that moment, something shifted. Not because the young man's circumstances had changed. Not because the world had suddenly become easier or safer. But because someone had seen him. Someone had recognized the goodness that was already there. buried beneath all the pain and confusion. And in being seen, he began to remember it himself. This is what the Buddhist tradition calls Buddha nature. It is the inherent goodness, the inherent freedom that lives in every being without exception. It cannot be destroyed by hardship or failure or confusion. It can only be forgotten, and it can always, always be remembered. So as you rest here tonight, let this teaching settle gently into your heart, like a leaf drifting down to the surface of a still pond. You do not need to become someone different in order to live a beautiful life. You do not need to find the perfect job, or achieve something remarkable, or be recognized by the world. You only need to remember what you already carry inside you. The same spirit that the cathedral builder felt as he shaped his stone. The same spirit that the young man glimpsed when someone finally saw him clearly. Your life, just as it is your cathedral. And the spirit you bring to it, the kindness, the care, the quiet willingness to offer what you have, that is your gift to the world. Perhaps tomorrow, as you go about your day, you might try a small experiment. Whatever task is in front of you, whether it is something you love or something you find tedious, pause for just a moment before you begin. Take one slow breath and ask yourself quietly, not with pressure but with curiosity, what if I offered this as a gift? What if I brought to this one small task the same care that the builder brought to his stone? You do not need to change what you are doing. You only need to change the spirit in which you do it. And you may find, as so many have found before you, that the task itself begins to feel different. Lighter, more alive, as if something is flowing through you that was always there, waiting to be remembered. The Buddha said, "Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened." Happiness never decreases by being shared. You are that candle, and your light, no matter how small it may seem to you, matters more than you know. Let this truth be a comfort to you as you rest. Let it settle into the quiet of your body. Let it be just as it is, and let it carry you gently towards sleep. As an old Zen teaching reminds us, when you do something, you should burn yourself completely, like a good bonfire, leaving no trace of yourself. Not burning with effort or ambition, but with wholeness, with the fullness of giving everything you are to this one moment, this one breath, this one beautiful, ordinary life. Let us pause for a moment here. Notice how you are feeling. Let the breath come and go, soft and easy. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Have you ever watched a very young child exploring the world for the first time? The way they reach for a leaf blowing across the grass, utterly fascinated. The way they laugh at nothing at all, just because being alive feels good. The way they look at a stranger's face with total openness, without suspicion or calculation, as if every person they meet might be wonderful. There is something in that openness that we recognize, something we remember even if we cannot quite name it. A kind of original freedom, a lightness that was ours before anyone taught us to be afraid. The Buddhist tradition has a beautiful word for this. It is called Buddha nature. And it does not mean that you are supposed to become a Buddha, or that you need to practice for 30 years in a cave before you can taste it. It means something much simpler and much more immediate. It means that freedom, that wide-open, unguarded quality you see in the eyes of a child, has never actually left you. It has only been covered over, layer by layer, by the habits of worry and self-protection that we all accumulate as we grow. Tonight, as we continue this gentle journey together, we are going to explore a very simple but powerful idea. You are already free. You do not need to earn it. You do not need to build it. You only need to remember it. There is a lovely image that a wise teacher once offered. She said that human beings are like butterflies who have somehow convinced themselves that they are still caterpillars. We have the wings. We have always had the wings. But instead of spreading them, we curl ourselves back into the cocoon because the cocoon feels familiar, feels safe, feels like the only thing we know. Think about that for a moment. Not with effort, just with curiosity. How much of your day do you spend inside some version of that cocoon? The cocoon of worry about what might go wrong. The cocoon of comparing yourself to others. The cocoon of rehearsing old conversations or planning for every possible future, or telling yourself the same tired story about who you are and what you are capable of. And the strangest thing about this cocoon is that we built it ourselves, thread by thread, year by year. We built it out of the things people told us when we were young. We built it out of our disappointments and our fears. We added to it every time we decided it was safer to stay small than to risk being seen. And after a while, the cocoon feels so solid, so real, that we forget it is something we created. We think it is who we are, but it is not who you are. It was never who you are. We do this not because we are foolish, but because we are tender. The cocoon is a strategy for protection. At some point in our lives, perhaps very early on, we learn that the world can be surprising and sometimes difficult. That people do not always respond with kindness. That our openness could be met with indifference or misunderstanding. And so we began to wrap ourselves up, layer by layer, in habits of mind that we hoped would keep us safe. And in a way, they did. They got us through. But now, perhaps, the cocoon has become smaller than we are. And somewhere inside it, the wings are getting restless. The Buddha said, in the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Letting go of the cocoon does not require force. It does not require dramatic effort or years of struggle. It only requires a willingness to notice that you are inside it, and then, very gently, to let it soften, to let a little light in, to trust that the wings know what to do if only we give them room. There is a common misunderstanding about meditation that is worth gently setting aside here. Many people come to meditation thinking of it as a kind of self-improvement project, as if there is something broken in us that needs to be fixed, and if we just sit still long enough, or concentrate hard enough, or follow the right technique, we will finally become the person we are supposed to be. We bring the same energy we bring to everything else in our lives, the energy of accomplishment, of goals, of checking things off a list, and we apply it to our inner world. Calm mind? Check. Open heart? Enlightenment? Still working on it. Give me another few months. But that is not quite how it works. And when we approach meditation this way, we often end up more tense than when we started, because now we have added one more thing to the list of things we are failing at. A Zen teacher was once asked by a student, "What is the purpose of meditation?" And the teacher smiled and said, "The purpose of meditation is not to become a better person. It is to realize that you were never as bad as you thought. That is worth sitting with for a moment. Not because it means we do not have room to grow or that there is nothing to learn. Of course there is. We are always learning, always unfolding, always becoming. But the deepest purpose of getting quiet and turning inward is not repair. It is recognition. It is the simple, astonishing act of seeing who you already are, beneath all the noise and worry and self-criticism, beneath the stories you have told yourself about your failures and your shortcomings, beneath the voice that says you should be further along by now. Let us explore a small story about this. There was once a traveler who spent many years searching for a rare and precious jewel. He had heard that this jewel existed somewhere in the world, and he believed that if he could find it, his life would be complete. He crossed rivers and mountains. He traveled through forests and cities. He asked everyone he met, "Have you seen the jewel? Do you know where it is?" Years passed. He grew tired, and his clothes grew worn. One evening, exhausted, he sat down beside a road and leaned against a tree. A kind old woman happened to walk by and asked him why he looked so weary. "I have been searching my whole life for a precious jewel," he said, "and I cannot find it anywhere." The old woman looked at him for a long moment, and then she laughed, very gently. "My dear friend," she said, "look down." And the traveler looked down, and there, sewn into the lining of his own coat, was the jewel. It had been with him the entire time. Through every journey, every hardship, every year of searching, he had been carrying it all along. It is remembering. The Buddha did not invent freedom. He did not create enlightenment from nothing. He sat down beneath a tree one night, grew very still, and recognized something that was already true. Something that had always been true. And what was true for him is true for you, right now, as you lie here listening, with nowhere to go and nothing to fix. You are already free. You have only forgotten. Let us explore a story about this, because it brings the teaching to life in a way that ideas alone sometimes cannot. Once, long ago, a young student traveled a great distance to study with an old Zen master who lived in a simple temple on the edge of a forest. The temple was small and peaceful, surrounded by tall bamboo that swayed in the wind. The master was known throughout the region for his gentleness and his silence, and the young student was eager and earnest. He wanted very much to understand the nature of awakening, to taste the freedom he had heard about, and he practiced with all his heart. After some months of living and practicing together, the master told the student it was time to go off on his own. "Continue your practice in solitude," he said, "and write to me each month to tell me how things are going." The student bowed deeply, packed his few belongings, and set off for a small hut in the mountains. He sat in stillness every day, watching his breath, giving himself completely to the path. After the first month, he sat down by candlelight and composed a careful letter. He wrote, "Dear teacher, I have been practicing with great effort, and I am happy to report that I now feel a wonderful expansion of awareness. I sense a deep oneness with all of life." The old master read the letter, raised an eyebrow, and set it aside without a word. The next month, another letter arrived. "Dear teacher, I have made further progress. I have discovered a kind of holiness that exists in all things. Every leaf, every stone, every sound seems to glow with sacred light." The master read this one too, sighed quietly, and placed it in the drawer. A month later, the student wrote again, his words brimming with excitement. "Dear teacher, the great mystery of existence has revealed itself to me. I see now that the one and the many are not separate. All is interconnected in ways I can barely describe." The master shook his head gently and poured himself another cup of tea. Another letter came, even more breathless than the last. "Dear teacher, I have arrived at the deepest understanding. Nothing is truly born, nothing truly passes away. All form is a shimmering appearance, and what we call the self is simply a beautiful, passing dream." The master read this and closed his eyes for a long moment. Not because the student was wrong, exactly. Everything the student described was, in its own way, a genuine experience. Beautiful, even. But there was something underneath each letter that troubled the old man. Each one was really asking the same quiet, urgent question beneath its surface. Is this it? Am I there yet? Have I arrived? Please, teacher, tell me I have finally become what I am supposed to be. And then, something unexpected happened. The letters stopped. 1 month passed without a word. Then 2, 3, 5. A whole year slipped by in silence. The seasons turned around the little temple. Snow fell and melted. The plum trees blossomed and dropped their petals. The master waited patiently, tending his garden, feeding the birds, watching the days come and go. Finally, he decided it was time to write to the student himself. He sent a short, gentle note. "It has been a very long while since I have heard from you. Please tell me how your practice is going." A few weeks later, a reply arrived. It was very short. Just one line, written in a calm, unhurried hand. "What is there to report? I am just living my life." And when the master read those words, a great warm smile spread across his old face. He laughed softly to himself, folded the letter carefully, and placed it close to his heart. "At last," he whispered, "he understands." What makes that story so beautiful is what it tells us about the nature of real freedom. All the grand experiences the student described, the oneness, the holiness, the cosmic understanding, those are real. They can happen in meditation, and they can be quite wonderful. Like sunsets, like the first warm day of spring, like hearing a piece of music that makes you forget where you are. But they are experiences. They come and they go, like clouds crossing the sky. And if we cling to them, if we turn them into achievements, if we use them to measure our progress or prove our worth, then we have missed the point entirely. The old master was not looking for a report of extraordinary experiences. He was waiting for something far simpler and far more precious. He was waiting for the student to stop performing, to stop measuring, to stop reaching for something outside of himself, and instead to simply settle into his own life, like a bird settling onto a branch. Not because the branch is remarkable, but because it is where the bird belongs. Real freedom is not a state you achieve. It is not a peak experience you climb toward. It is much more ordinary and much more available than that. It is simply being at home in your own life, resting in this present moment without needing it to be different, walking through your day with an open heart, without constantly asking, "Is this it?" And this is one of the most beautiful secrets of the Buddhist path. The freedom you seek is not hidden somewhere far away. It is not at the top of a mountain or at the end of a 10-year retreat or in some special experience you have not yet had. It is here, in this very moment, in the sound of your own breathing, in the warmth of the blanket against your skin, in the quiet fact that you are alive, right now, and listening. There is a Zen saying that captures this beautifully. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. You do not have to make the grass grow. You do not have to force the spring. You only have to be here, be present, and trust that life knows how to unfold. The freedom you are looking for is not at the end of some long road. It is the ground you are already standing on. Perhaps this is why so many of the greatest spiritual teachers in history have seemed, to the people around them, remarkably ordinary. Not dramatic, not floating above the ground, not surrounded by light and miracles, just fully, quietly, joyfully present, chopping vegetables, sweeping the floor, pouring tea with complete attention, as if pouring tea were the most important thing in the world. Because in that moment, it was. An old Zen master was once asked by a visitor, "What did you do before enlightenment?" He said, "I chopped wood and carried water." The visitor leaned forward eagerly. "And what do you do now, after enlightenment?" The master smiled gently. "I chop wood and carry water." The visitor looked confused. Then what changed? The master was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Before, I chopped wood and wished I were somewhere else. I carried water and thought about what would come next. Now, when I chop wood, I chop wood. When I carry water, I carry water. And that is all. The task is the same, but the person doing it is at ease. The weight has been set down. Not the weight of life, but the weight of pretending that life should be something other than what it is. The weight of striving. The weight of endlessly comparing this moment to some imaginary better moment that has not yet arrived. This is the invitation of these teachings, and it is the thread that runs gently through everything we are exploring tonight. Let life be. Let it be what it is. And notice that when you stop struggling against the river, something quietly miraculous happens. You begin to float. You discover that the water was always holding you up. So as you lie here now, breathing gently, there is nothing to figure out, nothing to solve. You can set down the project of becoming. You can set down the measuring and the comparing. You can release, just for now, just for this quiet moment, the habit of asking whether this is enough. Because you are enough. You have always been enough. And this moment, with all its simplicity, is enough too. The Buddha, after his long search, said something remarkably simple. I am awake. Not I have achieved something extraordinary. Not I have reached a place that others cannot. Just I am awake. Present. Here. Seeing clearly. Resting in what is. And that same awakeness is available to you right now without moving an inch. Without changing a single thing about your life. It was here before you started listening tonight. It will be here long after these words have faded. It is the quiet, steady light at the center of you, and all you need to do is let it be. Let us pause here for a moment. Feel the weight of your body, held by whatever is beneath you. Notice one breath, just one, from beginning to end. And when you are ready, we will continue together. we have been talking about freedom tonight. The freedom that comes from remembering who you already are. The freedom that lives beneath the layers of worry and self-protection we have built up over the years. And now, gently, we are going to turn our attention to something very practical and very beautiful. We are going to look at what actually happens when you get quiet. When you stop doing and simply start noticing. Because when you sit still and pay attention, you begin to see something remarkable. You begin to see that your experience, the whole of it, everything you think of as your life, in any given moment, is not a solid, fixed thing at all. It is more like a river, or rather, like several rivers flowing together, braiding around each other, always moving, always changing, never quite the same from one heartbeat to the next. And seeing this, really seeing it, is one of the gentlest doorways to peace you will ever find. Imagine, if you will, that you are sitting beside a wide, gentle river on a warm evening. The sky is soft with the last colors of the day, peach and lavender fading into a deep, quiet blue. You can hear the water moving, unhurried, over smooth stones. It makes that sound that water has always made, a sound older than any language, older than any city, a sound that has been soothing human hearts since the very beginning. Perhaps there are birds settling into the trees along the bank. Perhaps there is the faint hum of insects in the tall grass. The air is warm and still, and you are comfortable, and there is nothing at all you need to do. You are not in the river. You are beside it. And from this still, easy place, you can watch everything that passes. Leaves and small branches drift by on the surface, catching the last light. The reflections of clouds slide along the water like slow, silent travelers. The current moves and changes, sometimes quickening, sometimes almost still, but always flowing. Always going somewhere, though you do not need to know where, and you do not need to follow. This is one of the most ancient and most beautiful images in all of Buddhist teaching. The image of sitting quietly by the river of your own experience, watching it flow, without needing to grab anything out of it or push anything away. Not judging, not controlling, just watching, just being present with the simple, endless, fascinating fact that things are moving, things are changing, and you are here to see it. The Buddha described our inner life not as one river, but as five. Five great streams of experience that are always moving, always changing, always flowing through us and around us. And understanding these rivers, even just a little, can bring a remarkable sense of peace. Because once you begin to see your experience as a river, you stop trying to build a dam. You stop trying to hold the water still. And instead, you simply sit on the bank and breathe and let it all flow by. The first river is the river of the senses. Right now, as you listen, sounds are arriving at your ears. These words, perhaps the hum of a room, or the soft whir of a fan, or the distant murmur of the world going on outside. Perhaps there are night sounds, crickets, or wind, or the far-off call of something alive in the dark. If you close your eyes, you can feel the textures against your skin, the weight of a blanket, the temperature of the air, the subtle pressure of your body against whatever is holding you up. There is the taste of your last sip of water still lingering. There is the gentle rhythm of your own breath, which you can feel if you turn your attention to it. This river of sense experience is always flowing. Sounds arise and fade away, as if they were never there at all. Sensations bloom in the body and dissolve. The light shifts and changes, even behind your closed eyelids, painting soft patterns that come and go on their own. Nothing in the world of the senses ever stays the same from one moment to the next. It is like a gentle kaleidoscope, always turning, always offering something new, never repeating itself exactly. And there is something deeply restful about simply noticing this. Because when you see that sense experience is a river, you stop expecting it to hold still. You stop trying to freeze one pleasant moment and keep it forever. You stop fighting with the unpleasant moments because you can feel that they too are moving, already changing, already on their way somewhere else. Instead, you can let each moment arrive and pass, like a guest who visits briefly, offers a gift, and moves on. There is a graciousness in this, a hospitality toward your own experience that feels remarkably like peace. The second river is the river of feelings and moods. This one is more intimate and perhaps more familiar. You know this river well, even if you have never called it that. It is the constantly shifting weather of your inner life. Happiness, sadness, restlessness, calm, irritation, gratitude, boredom, tenderness, anticipation, contentment, longing, relief. There are so many shades and textures of feeling that move through a single day, a single hour, even a single conversation. More than we could ever name. If you were to sit quietly for just 10 minutes and pay gentle attention to your inner weather, you would be amazed at how many different feelings pass through you. They arrive uninvited, like weather. Sometimes a bright, warm front of contentment drifts in for no apparent reason, and you feel at ease with everything, and the world seems kind. Sometimes a small cloud of worry appears at the edge of your mind, and you are not even sure what it is about. It is just there, a subtle tightening, a whisper of unease. Sometimes you feel a sudden, unexpected tenderness towards someone you love, a wave of warmth that seems to come from nowhere. And just as quickly, it gives way to a vague restlessness, and then to something else entirely, something you cannot even name. The ancient teachers noticed something important about this river. We do not choose our feelings. They arise on their own, from causes and conditions that are often invisible to us. A memory surfaces and brings a wave of warmth. A sound triggers a flutter of unease. The body is tired and a fog of heaviness rolls in. We did not decide any of this. It simply happened. Let us explore a small story about this. There was once a student who went to her teacher in great distress. "I have been meditating for many months," she said, "and yet I still feel sadness sometimes. I still feel restless. I still feel afraid. What am I doing wrong?" The teacher listened patiently and then gestured toward the window. "Do you see the sky out there?" she asked. "Yes," said the student. "Is it a good sky when the sun is shining?" "Of course." "And is it a bad sky when the clouds come?" The student paused. "No," she said slowly. "It is the same sky." "Exactly," said the teacher. "The sky does not struggle with its weather. It does not try to push away the clouds or hold on to the sunshine. It simply allows everything to pass through. Your awareness is that sky, and your feelings, all of them, are simply weather. And this is wonderfully freeing to understand, because if feelings are weather, then you do not need to fix them, fight them, or be afraid of them. You only need to let them move through you, the way clouds move across that open, patient sky. The third river is the river of perceptions. This one is more subtle but equally fascinating once you begin to notice it. Perception is the way we organize and recognize the world around us. It is the part of the mind that says, "That is a tree. That is a face. That is music. That is the smell of rain." Without even trying, without any effort at all, the mind is constantly sorting the raw flow of experience into things we recognize, things we can name, things we think we understand. We take this for granted, but it is quite remarkable when you look closely. Every moment, your mind is performing this extraordinary act of recognition and interpretation. It hears a sound and says, "bird." It feels a texture and says, "blanket." It sees a pattern of light and shadow and says, "room." It does this so quickly, so automatically, that we never stop to wonder at it. And the interesting thing about perception is that it is always slightly different from one moment to the next. You look at a familiar room, and today something catches your eye that you have never noticed before. A crack in the ceiling, the way the evening light falls on a shelf, the particular color of a wall you have walked past 1,000 times. You listen to a piece of music you know well, and suddenly you hear a note, a phrase, a quality in the singer's voice that seems entirely new, as if it had been hiding there all along, waiting for you to hear it. This is because perception is not a photograph. It is a living thing. It shifts with our mood, our attention, our state of mind. The same cup of tea can taste ordinary on a busy morning and deeply comforting on a quiet evening. The same face can look different depending on whether we are rushed or still. A great Zen teacher was once asked to describe the purpose of meditation in just a few words. He thought for a moment and said, "Beginner's mind." That is all. Beginner's mind. The willingness to see things fresh, as if for the first time, every time. To let go of what we think we know about a person, a place, a situation, and to see it as it actually is, right now, in this particular moment. Because it is never quite the same as it was before. The river of perception flows on, and each glance is genuinely new, if only we have the eyes to see it. The fourth river is perhaps the most familiar of all. It is the river of thoughts. If you have ever tried to sit quietly and watch your mind, you know exactly what this river is like. It is more like a waterfall than a gentle stream. Thoughts pour through continuously. Plans, memories, opinions, worries, fantasies, little arguments with people who are not even in the room, mental lists you forgot to write down, fragments of songs that got stuck somewhere in your head 3 days ago, random images, and little stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. It is busy in there. It truly is. The mind is a remarkably active place, even when the body is perfectly still. Especially when the body is perfectly still, if we are being honest about it. And one of the kindest discoveries you can make in meditation is that this is perfectly normal. Everyone's mind does this. The most seasoned meditator in the most remote mountain temple still has a mind that chatters and wanders and produces thoughts without being asked. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is not a sign that you are bad at being still or that your mind is broken. It is simply what minds do. They think. They produce thoughts the way a spring produces water, the way a bird produces song. You cannot stop it, and you do not need to. There is actually something quite humorous about this, if you look at it with a gentle eye. Here you are, trying to be peaceful and serene, and meanwhile your mind is composing shopping lists, replaying a conversation from last Tuesday, and wondering what that odd noise was, all at the same time. If the people near you could hear your thoughts, they would be quite amazed at the range and speed and sheer creative energy of what goes on in there. The invitation is not to stop the river of thought, but to step back from it a little. To notice the thoughts flowing by without climbing into each one and being carried away. To watch a thought appear, the way you might watch a leaf land on the surface of a stream, and then to let it drift on past without following it downstream. This takes no effort. It only takes a gentle willingness to observe. And when you do, something lovely happens. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are visitors. Some are welcome, some are strange, some are quite uninvited. But you are the space in which they come and go. And that space, your awareness, is always calm, always present, always quietly watching. The fifth river is the most mysterious and in some ways the most beautiful. It is the river of awareness itself. This one is harder to describe because it is not something you can point to in the usual way. It is more like the light by which you see everything else. You can notice sounds, feelings, perceptions, and thoughts because there is something aware of them. Something that knows. Something that watches without getting pulled into the current. The ancient teachers loved to find images for this awareness because words alone could not quite capture it. Some compared it to a mirror. A mirror reflects everything that passes before it, beautiful things and ordinary things and strange things alike, but the mirror itself is never changed by what it reflects. It remains clear, open, untouched. No matter what appears on its surface, the mirror does not become what it reflects. It simply shows it and lets it go. Others compared awareness to the ocean. On the surface, there are always waves. Some are large and dramatic. Some are small and barely noticeable. The waves are your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, always moving, always changing. But if you dive beneath the surface, even just a little way down, there is a stillness that the waves never reach. The deep ocean is always calm, always quiet, regardless of what is happening above. And your awareness, the teachers said, is that deep ocean. It is the part of you that has always been calm, even in the busiest, most turbulent moments of your life. And resting in that awareness, even for a moment, brings a kind of peace that is very different from the peace of getting what you want or having things go your way. It is a peace that does not depend on conditions. It does not require the world to be a certain way. It does not require you to feel a certain way. It is already here, always, beneath the movement of the 5 rivers, like the deep water beneath the waves. This is what the Buddha was pointing to when he said, simply, be a light unto yourself. You do not need to borrow anyone else's light. You do not need to look outside yourself for the peace you are seeking. The awareness that is listening to these words right now, the gentle, spacious knowing that is present behind your closed eyes, that is the light. It has always been the light, and it asks nothing of you except that you rest in it. There is a beautiful way of bringing all of this together. Imagine yourself as someone who has just taken a seat in a vast, comfortable theater. The theater is warm and quiet. The seat is deep and soft. You are settled in, completely at ease, with nothing to do and nowhere to be. And on the great screen in front of you, the most extraordinary film is playing. It is the film of your life. There are scenes of beauty and scenes of struggle. There are comedies and quiet dramas. There are long, gentle stretches where very little seems to happen, and sudden moments of surprise that take your breath away. The 5 rivers, senses, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, awareness, are all flowing across that screen, weaving together into the rich and ever-changing tapestry of your experience. And for much of our lives, we are so absorbed in the film that we forget we are in the theater. We get swept up in the plot. We lean forward during the exciting parts. We feel our hearts quicken. We laugh. We worry. We grip the armrests during the tense moments. We fall so completely into the story that we forget entirely that we are the one watching. But then, every now and again, something shifts. Maybe a sound from outside the film catches your attention. Maybe you take a deeper breath than usual and feel your body settling into the seat. And in that small, quiet moment, you remember, oh, I am here. I am in the theater. This is a film, and I am watching it. And I am perfectly safe in my seat. That moment of remembering is meditation. That is all it is. Not stopping the film, not judging the film, not trying to rewrite the film into something better or more impressive. Just remembering that you are the one watching. And in that remembering, there is space. There is ease. There is the gentle recognition that no matter what is playing on the screen, no matter how dramatic or confusing or beautiful the scene may be, you, the watcher, are at peace. You have always been at peace. A Zen teaching puts it this way: you are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. So tonight, there is nothing you need to do with any of this. You do not need to label your 5 rivers, or watch them with great concentration, or practice anything at all. These teachings are offered the way a friend might offer you a warm blanket on a cool evening. Simply to comfort. Simply to remind you of something you already know in the quietest part of yourself. That beneath all the movement and change of your daily life, beneath the busy rivers of thought and feeling and sensation, there is a stillness that is always available to you. A place of rest that no one can take away. A peace that has been with you all along. You are the river, yes, and you are also the bank. You are the audience in the theater. You are the sky behind the weather. And you can rest there, gently, easily, anytime you choose. Even now. Especially now. The great Zen teacher who was once asked to sum up all of Buddhist teaching in just a few words simply said, "Not always so." Everything changes. Everything flows. Nothing you are experiencing right now, whether pleasant or unpleasant, is permanent. It will shift. It will move on. It will give way to something new. And knowing this, truly feeling this in your bones, you can relax. You can let the rivers flow. You can lean back in your comfortable seat and watch the beautiful, strange, unrepeatable film of this one precious life. And you can let it be, just as it is, flowing, changing, arriving and departing, like guests at a great feast, like clouds across the face of the moon, like the soft sound of water over stones on a warm evening. Let us pause for a moment here. Feel yourself breathing. Feel yourself held. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Not always so. Those 3 small words, which we touched upon at the close of our last reflection, contain one of the most profound and most liberating truths the Buddhist tradition has ever offered. And they are worth returning to now, because they open the door to something many of us long for, but rarely find: the ability to be at peace with not knowing what comes next. We live in a world that loves certainty. We make plans. We set goals. We build structures and systems and schedules, all designed to make us feel that we know what is coming. And there is nothing wrong with any of that. Plans are useful. Goals can give us direction. But somewhere deep inside, we all know the truth. Life does not follow our plans. It never has. And the tighter we hold on to the way we think things should go, the more we suffer when they go some other way. An old teacher in the forests of Southeast Asia had a favorite phrase that he used to answer almost any question his students brought to him. He was a gentle man with bright, amused eyes, and he lived simply in a monastery surrounded by tall trees. Students would walk the long dirt road to his door with all manner of questions. Questions about the nature of the mind. Questions about their relationships. Questions about what would happen next in their lives. And no matter what they asked, he would smile, tilt his head slightly, and say two gentle words that, in his language, meant something like, "Uncertain, is it not?" The students found this both maddening and strangely comforting. One student came to him in a state of great anxiety. "Teacher," he said, "I have been offered a new position in a distant city. I do not know whether to accept it. What if I make the wrong choice? What if everything falls apart?" The old teacher listened carefully, nodded, and said, "Uncertain, is it not?" "Yes, but teacher, I need to know. Will it be a good decision?" "Uncertain, is it not?" The teacher smiled. Another student, sitting nearby, asked about her meditation practice. "Teacher, I have been sitting every day for a year, and I am still restless. Will I ever find peace?" The teacher looked at her with warm eyes. "Uncertain, is it not?" Even when someone asked about the weather or about what was for dinner, there was a chance the old teacher would offer that same gentle phrase and then laugh, because he found the whole thing genuinely delightful. Not because their questions were silly, but because the truth was so simple and so easy to forget. And after a while, if they were patient, something in the students began to soften, because the teacher was not being evasive. He was offering them the deepest kind of honesty. He was saying, "Yes, it is uncertain. All of it. And that is not a problem to be solved. It is a truth to be met. And when you meet it openly, when you stop fighting against the not knowing and instead let it hold you the way the earth holds a seed before it sprouts, something remarkable happens. You discover that uncertainty is not the enemy of peace. It is, in its own quiet way, the doorway to peace. Think for a moment about the seasons. Right now, wherever you are, the season is what it is. Perhaps it is warm. Perhaps it is cool. Perhaps the days are growing shorter or longer, or holding steady in the fullness of summer or the quiet of winter. You did not choose the season. You cannot hurry it along or hold it back. It arrived on its own, in its own time, as seasons always do. And yet we trust the seasons, do we not? We trust that winter will give way to spring, that the long dark nights will eventually soften into mornings filled with birdsong. We do not panic when the leaves begin to fall, because we know, in our bones, that this is part of a rhythm much larger than ourselves. The earth breathes in and the earth breathes out. The tides rise and recede. The moon fills and empties and fills again. Everything in the natural world moves in great, unhurried cycles. Birth and growth and rest and renewal, over and over, without anyone directing it, without anyone making a plan. And you are part of that rhythm. Your body knows this, even when your mind forgets. Your heart beats without your permission. Your lungs breathe without your instruction. Your cells are renewing themselves right now as you listen in ways too complex and too beautiful for any mind to fully comprehend. You are being carried by a rhythm that is older than thought, deeper than worry, vaster than any plan you could ever make. The Buddha spoke of this when he said, "Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well." Not because endings are easy, but because when we stop resisting the natural rhythm of things, when we stop trying to freeze the river or hold the seasons still, we discover something we did not expect. We discover that the flow itself is trustworthy. That life knows how to carry us if only we let it. Let us explore a story about this. It is a small, light-hearted one, but it carries a gentle wisdom. Once, a man was traveling by train through the countryside. He had boarded in a great hurry and told the conductor, "I need to get off at the village of Meadowbrook." The conductor shook his head. "I am sorry, sir, but we do not stop at Meadowbrook today. It is not on our schedule." The man looked crestfallen. "But I must get there. I have important business." The conductor thought for a moment and said, "Well, I will tell you what I can do. When we pass through Meadowbrook, the train will slow down a little at the bend. I will open the door, and you can hop off. Just be sure to run alongside the train as your feet hit the ground, so you do not stumble." The man agreed, and when the train slowed at the bend near Meadowbrook, the conductor opened the door, and the man leaped out, running alongside the train just as he had been told. He was doing quite well, running briskly, keeping his balance, when a second conductor in the next car happened to spot him through the window. This conductor, seeing a man running alongside a moving train, quickly opened his own door and with a great heave of effort, pulled the man back onto the train. "You are very lucky, my friend," the second conductor said, brushing off the man's coat. "This train does not stop at Meadowbrook today." Now, there is something quietly wonderful about that story, because it is, in a way, a picture of how life works. We make our plans. We think we know where we are going. We leap out of the train with great determination, and then life, in its mysterious way, picks us right back up and carries us somewhere else entirely. We end up at a station we never intended to visit, doing things we never planned to do, living a life that looks nothing like the one we imagined when we were young. And here is the question that the ancient teachings gently ask us to consider. Is that a failure? Or is it simply the way life works? How many of us, if we are honest, can say that our life unfolded according to the plan we made? Very few, perhaps none. The relationships we thought would last forever changed in ways we could not have imagined. The careers we were so certain about took unexpected turns. The places we thought we would live, the people we thought we would become, the tidy little picture we once held of what our future would look like, all of it shifted and rearranged itself in ways we could not have predicted. And yet here we are, still here, still breathing, still showing up, still finding our way, one day at a time, through a life that looks nothing like the map we drew when we were young. And if you look back honestly, you may notice something surprising. Some of the best things that ever happened to you were things you never planned. The person you fell in love with, the place you ended up living, the work that found you when you were looking for something else entirely. Life had its own plan, and in many cases, its plan was better than yours. For most of us, there is still a quiet grief in the gap between what we expected and what actually happened. A sense that something went wrong, that we missed a turn somewhere, or made a mistake, or were not quite good enough to make our plan succeed. Our culture encourages this feeling. It tells us that if we work hard enough, plan carefully enough, try with enough determination, we should be able to control the outcome. And when the outcome surprises us anyway, as it always does, we blame ourselves. We think we failed, when in truth, we simply lived. But the old teacher in the forest would simply smile. Uncertain, is it not? Not as a dismissal, not as a way of saying your feelings do not matter, but as an invitation to look at things differently, to consider the possibility that life is not a problem to be solved but a mystery to be lived, and that the surprises, even the difficult ones, are part of something larger and wiser than our plans could ever hold. There is a very old saying that captures this truth with great tenderness. Sometimes I go about feeling sorry for myself, and all the while I am being carried by great winds across the sky. What a beautiful thing to consider, that even in the moments when we feel most lost, most uncertain, most adrift, something is carrying us. The great rhythm of life itself, the same force that turns the seasons and moves the tides and grows the grass from the dark soil, is holding us, moving us, carrying us forward in ways we cannot see. And all that is asked of us is to trust it. Not blindly, not with forced cheerfulness or false certainty, but with the quiet, humble trust of someone who has noticed again and again that the river always finds its way to the sea. A wise woman once wrote something that has stayed with many people who have read it. She said that security is mostly something we imagine. It does not truly exist in the natural world, and even the youngest among us know this somewhere inside. Children, she observed, do not live in security. They live in wonder. They live in immediacy. They live right here, right now, in the full brightness of the present moment, and they do not ask whether the next moment will be safe. They simply meet it when it comes. She suggested that trying to avoid all risk is no safer, in the long run, than stepping forward into the unknown. And that life, when we are brave enough to embrace it fully, is either a great adventure or it is nothing much at all. There is a freedom in those words that you can almost feel in your body if you let them sink in. Not the reckless freedom of someone who does not care what happens, but the spacious, graceful freedom of someone who has made peace with the fact that they do not control everything, who has looked honestly at the nature of this life and said, yes, it is uncertain. Yes, it is always moving. And I am going to love it anyway. I am going to show up for it anyway. I am going to meet each new day with as much openness as I can, because that is what it means to be truly alive. This is what the Buddhist teachings mean by letting go. Not giving up, not becoming passive or careless or indifferent, but releasing that tight grip on the way things are supposed to be and allowing them to be the way they actually are. Letting the seasons turn, letting the river flow, letting the train carry you even when you do not know the station where it will stop. And here is what is surprising about letting go. it does not feel like loss. It feels like relief, like setting down a heavy bag you have been carrying so long you forgot it was there, like taking off shoes that are too tight and feeling the cool grass under your feet, like exhaling after holding your breath. The Buddha said, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. And part of loving yourself is being gentle with yourself when things do not go as planned. Offering yourself the same kindness you would offer a dear friend who came to you confused and uncertain. Sitting with them quietly, not trying to fix anything, not offering clever solutions, just being there. And saying, softly, 'I do not know what comes next. And that is all right. I am here. I am breathing. And that is enough for now.' So tonight, if there is something in your life that feels uncertain, something you cannot quite see the shape of yet, something that worries you or keeps you awake, you might try holding it a little differently. Instead of gripping it, fighting it, trying to force it into a form you recognize, see if you can simply let it be. Like a season that has not yet revealed itself. Like a river that is still finding its way. Like a story whose next chapter has not yet been written. You do not need to know the ending. You only need to be here, in this moment, letting the great winds carry you. Trusting, even a little, that wherever you are being taken is exactly where you need to go. Uncertain, is it not? And perhaps that is not so frightening after all. Perhaps it is simply what it means to be alive. Let us rest with that for a moment. There is no hurry, just the soft rhythm of breathing, in and out, like the tide. And when you are ready, we will continue together. So far tonight, we have been exploring the nature of freedom. The freedom that comes from remembering who you are. The freedom that comes from watching the rivers of experience flow by without clinging to them. The freedom that comes from making peace with the beautiful, tender uncertainty of this life. And now we come to perhaps the most important question of all. If everything is changing, if nothing can be held, if life is this great flowing river that we cannot control, then how do we love? How do we care for the things and people that matter to us? How do we tend this precious, fragile, beautiful world without gripping it so tightly that we crush what we are trying to protect? The answer the Buddhist tradition offers is not what most people expect. It is not a withdrawal from love. It is a deepening of it. There was once a gardener who loved her garden more than almost anything in the world. It was not a grand garden. It was small and tucked behind a modest house on a quiet lane. But it was alive with color and life. In the spring, there were crocuses and tulips. In the summer, sunflowers and lavender. In the autumn, chrysanthemums and late roses that caught the low afternoon light. She had tended it for years, through dry summers and harsh winters, through seasons of abundance and seasons when everything seemed reluctant to grow. She knew every plant by name, the way you might know the members of your family. She knew which ones loved the morning sun and which preferred the cool shade beneath the old stone wall. She knew when to water and when to wait, when to prune and when to let things grow wild for a season, when to be gentle and when to cut back with a firm hand. Her garden was beautiful, and it gave her great joy. But there was one thing the gardener had to learn again and again, one lesson that the garden taught her every single year, without fail, no matter how skilled she became. She could not make the flowers bloom. She could prepare the soil. She could plant the seeds with love and precision. She could water and weed and fertilize and tend with all the care in the world. But the blooming itself was not up to her. It belonged to the flowers. It belonged to the rain and the sun and the mysterious, patient intelligence of the earth. And all her devotion, all her attention, all her years of faithful care could not force a single petal to open one moment before it was ready. This is one of the simplest and most important teachings in all of Buddhist wisdom, and it applies not only to gardens but to everything we love. We live in a world that tells us love means control, that caring means fixing, that if we love someone enough, or work hard enough, or worry enough, we can make things turn out the way we want. We can protect the people we love from all difficulty. We can shape our lives into something perfect and keep them that way. We can hold on to what we have and prevent it from ever changing or slipping away. And so we try. We plan and manage and organize. We fuss over details. We lie awake at night running through scenarios, trying to prepare for every possible outcome. We grip our relationships tightly, our health, our finances, our reputations. And the tighter we grip, the more exhausted we become. Because we are trying to do something that cannot be done. We are trying to hold the river still with our bare hands. But life does not work that way. And deep down, in that quiet place where we are honest with ourselves, we know this. We know that our children will grow up and make their own choices, and that many of those choices will surprise us, and some will worry us, and there is only so much we can do. We know that the people we love will change, because that is what people do, and so will we. We know that our bodies will shift and soften over the years, that our circumstances will rearrange themselves in ways we cannot predict, that nothing we hold will stay exactly as it is in this moment. Not our homes, not our health, not even our most cherished relationships. Everything is in motion. Everything is in the river. And here is the tender paradox at the heart of these teachings, and perhaps the most beautiful thing the Buddha ever taught about love. The recognition that everything changes does not mean we should stop caring. It does not mean we should pull back, build walls around our hearts, and refuse to love, because love always involves the possibility of loss. Just the opposite. It means we can love more freely, more fully, more joyfully than we ever imagined. Because we are no longer trying to love and control at the same time. We are no longer confusing love with grasping. We are no longer asking love to do something it was never designed to do, which is to stop the world from turning. When you release the need to control, something extraordinary opens up. Love becomes lighter, more generous, more alive. It stops being a transaction, where I give you my love in exchange for the guarantee that you will never change, and it becomes a gift. A pure, open-hearted gift, offered freely, with no conditions attached. And that kind of love, that unconditional, ungrasping love, is the most powerful force in the universe. It is the love that heals, the love that frees, the love that the ancient teachers spent their lives trying to describe. The Buddha said, "In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? And those 3 questions are really one question, asked from 3 different angles. Because loving well and living fully and letting go are not separate activities. They are one single, graceful movement of the heart. There is an ancient text from the tradition of the Tao, the Way, that puts this beautifully. It says something like this: there is a time for moving forward and a time for staying still, a time for great energy and a time for rest, a time for strength and a time for gentleness. The wise one sees things as they are, without trying to control them. She lets them go their own way and resides calmly at the center. In this way, she is able to care for all things. Read that again in your mind, slowly. She lets them go their own way and resides calmly at the center. In this way, she is able to care for all things. This is the gracious heart. It is the heart that tends without clutching, that loves without demanding, that gives without keeping score. It is the heart of the gardener who does everything in her power and then trusts the rain. And it is not a cold heart. It is not detached or indifferent. This is a very important distinction, and one that many people misunderstand about these teachings. Some people hear the word equanimity or letting go and think it means not caring. They think the goal is to become so calm, so unruffled, so above it all that nothing touches you anymore. A kind of spiritual numbness. But that is not equanimity. That is fear dressed up in peaceful clothing. It is what happens when we have been hurt so many times that we decide the safest option is to stop feeling altogether, to retreat behind a wall of calm and call it wisdom. But there is no wisdom in it. Only exhaustion. Only a heart that has been asked to do the impossible, to stop being what it is. True equanimity is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel everything, the joy and the sorrow and the tenderness and the confusion, without being knocked over by any of it. It is the ability to stand in the middle of a changing world and keep your feet. Not because you do not feel the wind, but because your roots go deep. Not because you are numb, but because you are present. Fully present, with all of it. There is a story about a student who came to her teacher in frustration. "I try to stay balanced," she said. "I try to stay calm. But then something happens. Someone says something unkind, or something goes wrong, and I lose it. I react. I get swept away. Am I a terrible meditator?" The teacher laughed gently. "Do you know the difference between reacting and responding?" The student shook her head. "Reacting," the teacher said, "is what happens when the wind blows and you have no roots. You get knocked around. You flail. You say things you do not mean. You make the situation worse. And responding? Responding is what happens when the wind blows and your roots are deep. You feel the wind. You sway with it even. But you do not fall. And from that grounded place, you can choose what to do. You can speak clearly. You can act with kindness. You can tend to what needs tending. But how do I grow those roots?" the student asked. The teacher smiled. "You are growing them right now. Every time you sit quietly and notice what is happening inside you without trying to change it, your roots grow a little deeper. Every time you feel something difficult and stay with it instead of running away, they grow deeper still. You do not have to be perfect. You only have to be willing. A different teacher once explained it with a simpler image. Imagine you are holding a cup of tea. If someone bumps into you and you grip the cup tightly, rigidly, the tea will slosh everywhere. But if you hold it gently, with a soft hand and a relaxed arm, your body will naturally absorb the bump and the tea will barely move. The gentle grip is stronger than the tight one. The open hand is steadier than the fist. This is what the gracious heart feels like. Steady, warm, open, alive. Responsive to everything, reactive to nothing. A beloved poet once wrote 2 lines that capture this teaching with extraordinary simplicity. She wrote about how she had struggled for years and years just to love her own life. And then, one day, she watched a butterfly rise into the wind, weightless and free, and the butterfly seemed to whisper to her, "Do not love your life too much." And then it vanished into the wide world. There is something so tender in those 2 movements. First, the struggle to love this life at all, to accept it, to find beauty in it, to stop wishing it were different. That, all by itself, is half the journey. So many of us spend years resisting our own lives, comparing them to some imagined better version, waiting for things to improve before we allow ourselves to feel at home. And then, just when we learn to love it, the butterfly arrives with the second teaching. Do not hold on too tightly. Love it, yes. Cherish it. Be grateful for it. But hold it the way you would hold a butterfly in your open palm. Gently, knowing it was never yours to keep. Knowing that its beauty is inseparable from its freedom to fly away. A great poet from another tradition wrote something similar. He said, "Teach us to care and not to care," which sounds like a contradiction until you feel it in your body, and then it makes perfect sense. Care deeply, tend lovingly, show up fully, and at the same time do not clench. Do not demand. Do not try to make the world hold still so that you can feel safe. The gracious heart holds both of these at once. And it turns out that this is not a compromise between caring too much and caring too little. It is a third thing entirely. A way of being in the world that is both fully engaged and deeply at rest. Both passionate and peaceful. Both tender and strong. Let us explore a story about this, because it makes the teaching easier to feel. There was once an old monk who kept a small temple in the mountains. He was known for his calm, his kindness, and his unshakable equanimity. People from the surrounding villages would come to him with their troubles, and he would listen patiently, offer a few quiet words, and send them home feeling lighter. One autumn, a great storm came through the mountains. It arrived in the night, without warning. The wind tore at the trees, bending them nearly to the ground. Rain poured down in sheets so thick you could not see your hand in front of your face. Thunder shook the walls of the little temple, and the sound of it echoed off the cliffs and valleys all around. When the storm finally passed and morning came, the old monk walked outside into the pale, wet light. Everything was changed. His beloved garden, which he had tended for decades with such patient care, had been torn apart. The flower beds were flooded and churned to mud. The stone path was scattered, stones lying where the water had carried them. And a great old plum tree, which had stood beside the temple for longer than anyone could remember, had been uprooted in the night and lay on its side in the mud, its branches tangled, its roots exposed to the sky like open hands. A young student who lived at the temple came out and found the old monk standing in the wet grass, looking at the fallen tree. Water dripped from the eaves. The air smelled of earth and broken wood. The student expected the monk to be devastated. This garden had been his great love, his daily meditation, his quiet joy for so many years. But the old monk just stood there, his robes wet at the hem, his face calm. After a long time, the student could not bear the silence any longer and said, "Teacher, are you not heartbroken?" The monk looked at him with gentle, clear eyes. "Of course I am," he said softly. "This tree was my old friend. I used to sit beneath it in the summer and listen to the bees. And the garden was very dear to me. I will miss it as it was." "Then why are you so calm?" The monk was quiet for another moment, looking at the fallen tree, at the mud, at the pale sky opening above them. Then he said, "Because this is what happened. This is the storm, and this is the garden after the storm. I can see it clearly. I do not need it to be different from what it is. And tomorrow when I have rested, I will begin again." The student stared at him. "Just like that?" After all those years of work, the old monk smiled, and there was something in his smile that was both sad and deeply at peace. "Just like that. The soil is still good. The rain will stop. And there are seeds in the shed. There are always seeds in the shed. What else would I do?" And the next morning, true to his word, the old monk was out in the garden before dawn, clearing the debris, smoothing the soil, making small furrows with his fingers in the wet earth, beginning again. Not with bitterness, not with resignation, but with the same quiet love he had always brought to his garden. The same gentle hands, the same patient, faithful attention, as if this beginning were just as precious as all the beginnings that had come before it. Because it was. This is the gracious heart. It does not pretend that the storm did not happen. It does not push away grief or deny loss, but it does not stay frozen in the wreckage either. It mourns, it feels, it honors what was, and then it picks up the seeds and begins again. Because that is what love does. It tends. It cares. It starts over. Not because it is easy, but because that is its nature. And perhaps this is the deepest truth about the gracious heart. It is not something you have to learn from scratch. It is not a skill you develop through years of practice, though practice certainly helps. It is something that is already in you. It is the part of you that knows how to comfort a crying child, even when you do not know what to say. The part of you that reaches out to steady a stranger who stumbles. The part of you that sits quietly with a friend who is going through a hard time, not trying to fix anything, just being there. You know this heart. You have always known it. It is the same heart that aches when you see someone struggling and opens when someone is kind to you. It is your original tenderness, the same openness we talked about earlier, the freedom you were born with, now expressed not as inner peace alone, but as love in action. The Zen tradition says, the way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. And while that might sound impossible at first, like something only a saint could manage, what it really means is something quite practical and quite kind. When you stop insisting that life be a certain way, when you stop demanding that people behave according to your expectations, when you release the tight grip of, this is how it should be, and replace it with the open hands of, let me see how it actually is, you discover something wonderful. Your natural response to the world, the response that was always there, underneath the preferences and the fears, is not anger or frustration. It is kindness. It is care. It is the simple, uncomplicated wish for all beings to be well. This is what the Buddhist tradition calls metta, or loving kindness. And it is not something you have to manufacture or force. It is more like a spring that was always there underground, flowing quietly beneath the surface, and all you had to do was stop piling rocks on top of it. The Buddha said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal rule. And this, the ancient teachers say, is who you really are. Beneath the worry and the plans and the preferences and the fears, beneath all the layers of self-protection you have built up over the years, there is a heart that wants nothing more than to love this world well, to care for it gently, to tend it the way the gardener tends her garden, with patience and devotion and a willingness to begin again after every storm. And the more you let life be, the more space you create for that heart to do its quiet, beautiful work. So tonight, as you rest, you might notice that your heart is already open. You do not need to pry it open. You do not need to force it or work at it or practice some special technique. It opens on its own when you stop guarding it. Like the flowers in the garden that open under the sun, not because anyone tells them to, not because they made a plan, but because that is simply what flowers do when the conditions are right. And the conditions, right now, are right. You are safe. You are warm. You are resting. The day is behind you. The worries can wait until morning. And your heart, that gracious, resilient, patient, tender heart of yours, is already doing what it knows how to do. Quietly caring, quietly loving, quietly tending the garden of this one precious life, even now, even in sleep, even in the gentle darkness. Let it be. Trust it. It has always known the way. It knew the way before you were born, and it will know the way long after you have forgotten to worry about it. As an old Zen verse says, "The wild geese do not intend to cast their reflection. The water has no mind to receive their image. And yet the reflection appears perfectly, effortlessly, without anyone trying at all. This is the gracious heart, and it is yours." Let us rest here for a moment. Let the breath come softly, like a guest who knows it is always welcome. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Have you ever noticed that the people who seem the most defended, the most guarded, the most armored against the world are usually the ones who feel things the most deeply? It is one of the quiet ironies of being human. The harder the shell, the softer the creature inside. The louder the anger, the deeper the tenderness it is trying to protect. The thicker the walls we build around our hearts, the more fragile and precious the thing we are guarding behind them. We all do this, in our own way. We learn early. Perhaps someone was careless with our feelings when we were young, and we decided, without even knowing we were deciding, never to let that happen again. Perhaps we offered our trust, and it was not honored, or we showed our vulnerability and were met with indifference, or we opened our hearts and discovered that the world does not always handle open hearts with care. And so, piece by piece, we began to build a layer of toughness here, a habit of withdrawing there, a tendency to keep conversations on the surface where it is safe, a quickness to anger, because anger feels strong and strength feels like protection, A habit of saying, "I am fine," when we are not fine at all, because not being fine feels dangerous. Because it means the armor has a crack. And the remarkable thing, the thing that the Buddhist teachings point us toward with such compassion, is that all of this armor, every piece of it, was built for one reason: to protect something incredibly soft, something that has been there since the very beginning, something that did not need protection so much as it needed to be seen, to be held, to be told that it was safe. The Buddhist tradition has a beautiful name for this hidden tenderness. It is called bodhicitta, which means, in simple terms, the awakened heart. And the teaching is this: no matter how much armor you have put on, no matter how many layers of protection and habit and defensiveness you have wrapped around yourself over the years, there is a place inside you that has never been armored. A soft, open, vulnerable place that is as tender now as it was the day you were born. It is the place that aches when you see someone struggling. The place that opens, without your permission, when someone shows you unexpected kindness. The place that longs, beneath everything else, simply to love and be loved. And that soft spot, that tender, unguarded place, is not a weakness. It is your greatest strength. It is the very thing that makes you fully, beautifully, irreplaceably human. A wise teacher once wrote about this with extraordinary gentleness. She said that when we look beneath the surface of our strongest emotions, we always find something surprisingly tender. Beneath anger, if we are brave enough to look, there is usually fear. And beneath fear, if we go deeper still, there is something raw and sore and unprotected. Something that hurts. Not because it is broken, but because it is open. Because it cares. Because it has not given up on the world, even though the world has given it plenty of reasons to. Think about a time when you were really upset. Not mildly annoyed, but truly stirred up inside. And now, gently, without any judgment at all, see if you can remember what was underneath that feeling. Was there hurt? Was there a sense of not being seen, or not being valued, or not being understood? Was there, perhaps, a feeling of things not being fair, or of something precious being treated carelessly? If you look beneath the surface, what you will almost always find is something that cares. Something that expected better. Something that wanted the world to be kind and was startled and saddened when it was not. That something, that surprised, wounded caring, is your bodhicitta, your awakened heart, and it is always there, no matter what is happening on the surface. No matter how much noise the frustration or the worry or the defensiveness is making, the tenderness beneath it never goes away. It cannot go away. It is who you are at the very root. And this is one of the most liberating things you can ever discover about yourself. Because it means that you do not have to wait until all your difficult feelings pass before you can access the deepest, most beautiful part of who you are. It is here, right now, underneath whatever you are feeling, always underneath, always waiting, patient as the earth, like a spring beneath the frozen ground, like a lamp that is always burning even when the curtains are drawn. Now, it would be easy to hear all of this and think, well then, I should just tear off my armor. I should rip away all my defenses and walk around completely open and vulnerable all the time. But that is not what these teachings are saying. And any wise teacher would tell you that the armor you built served a purpose. It protected you at a time when you needed protection. It got you through situations that might have been too much for an unguarded heart. And there is no shame in having built it. None at all. The invitation is not to tear off the armor. The invitation is simply to notice that you are wearing it. And then, very gently, in your own time, to see if there are moments when you can loosen it a little. Moments when you can let a crack of light through. Moments when you can feel the soft spot pulsing beneath the hard surface and trust that it is safe enough, just for now, to let it breathe. The Buddha said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. And this is not a scolding. It is a kindness. It is the Buddha saying, you do not have to carry this weight anymore. You do not have to grip so tightly. There is a softer way to move through the world, and it is not only gentler on others, it is gentler on you. Let us explore a story about this tender place. Long ago, in a monastery tucked into the green hills of a quiet countryside, there lived a monk who was known, somewhat reluctantly by all who lived with him, for his fierce temper. He was a good man in many ways, generous with his time, hard-working in the kitchen garden, faithful in his daily meditation. But his anger was like a summer thunderstorm. It could rise from nowhere, fill the room with its heat, and leave everyone around him shaken and quiet, the way a forest goes still after a crack of thunder. The other monks were wary of him. They tiptoed around his moods the way you might tiptoe around a sleeping dog that sometimes growls. They avoided certain topics. They learned to read the weather of his face the way farmers read the sky before planting, looking for signs of sun or storm. One autumn, a traveling teacher passed through the monastery and spent a few days as a guest. She was a small, quiet woman with silver hair and a gentle manner, and she observed everything carefully, the way a bird watches from a branch. She saw the way the other monks moved around the angry one. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw, the way his eyes flickered with something that was not quite anger but was ready to become anger at any moment. On her last evening, as the sun was going down and the hills were turning gold, she asked to speak with him. He came to her in the little garden behind the temple, where she was sitting on a stone bench beneath a persimmon tree. He was already bristling, his arms crossed, his chin lifted. "I know what you are going to say," he told her, before she had said a word. "You are going to tell me I need to control my temper, that I need to be more patient, that I need to try harder. Everyone tells me that." The teacher looked at him for a long moment. The evening light was warm on her face. Her eyes were soft and very still. "No," she said, "I am not going to say any of that." The monk blinked. This was not what he had prepared for. "Then what?" "I am going to ask you a question. Just one. May I?" He uncrossed his arms, slowly, and nodded, wary but curious. "When you were a boy," she said, "before the anger came, what were you like?" The monk opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Something shifted in his face, like a cloud passing from in front of the sun. The hardness around his eyes softened. His jaw loosened. His shoulders, which had been up near his ears since he sat down, dropped just a fraction. He started, and then stopped. He looked away, toward the last light on the hills. "I was sensitive," he said quietly. "I felt everything. When the other children were unkind, it was like a fire on my skin. When someone was hurting, an animal, a younger child, anyone. I would feel it in my own body. I would cry for them. I could not help it. He paused. The persimmon tree rustled softly above them. My father said I was too soft. He said the world would eat me alive if I did not toughen up. He meant well. He was trying to protect me, I think. But after a while I started to believe him. I started to think there was something wrong with the way I was made. And so you toughened up, the teacher said, very gently. Yes, I learned to be hard. I learned that if I was angry, if I was loud, if I pushed people away before they could get close, then no one could see that I was hurting. No one could reach the place where I was still that boy, feeling everything, crying for the world. And the anger? The teacher asked. When did it come? The anger came as a kind of shield, the monk said slowly, as if he was seeing this clearly for the first time. It covered everything. It covered the sadness and the fear and the softness. It was like putting on a suit of iron. Nobody could get through. The teacher nodded slowly, and behind the iron, the monk's eyes filled. He tried to blink the feeling away, but it would not go. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. Behind the iron, I am still that boy, still feeling everything, still wanting the world to be kind. The teacher smiled at him then with such warmth, such recognition, such pure and simple kindness, that the monk had to look away again. It was too much. It was the very thing his armor had been built to prevent, being truly seen. That boy, she said softly, is not your weakness. He is your treasure. He is the most alive thing about you. The anger protected him, and there is a kind of grace in that. It did its job. But perhaps now, after all these years, it is safe enough to let him come out from behind the iron and sit in the sunlight for a while. Not all the time. Not all at once. Just a little. Just enough to breathe. The monk did not become a different person overnight. Change does not work that way, and the ancient teachers never pretended that it did. But something opened in him that evening. A small door, a crack of light, and over the months that followed, the monks around him noticed that his storms came less often, and when they did come, they passed more quickly. Not because he was suppressing his anger, but because the anger no longer had to do all the work. The tenderness beneath it had finally been acknowledged, and once it was seen, it began, very slowly, to heal. This is what the teaching of bodhicitta is really about. It is not about being perfectly calm all the time. It is not about eliminating difficult emotions or pasting a peaceful smile over your real feelings. It is about knowing, with a quiet certainty, that beneath every storm there is a soft spot, a tender, awakened, deeply caring place that has never been damaged by anything that has happened to you. A place that is, in the deepest sense, unbreakable. Not because it is hard, but because it is alive. Like water. You cannot break water. You can scatter it, you can freeze it, you can try to contain it. But it always finds its way back to itself. And so does your tenderness. No matter how long you have been armored, no matter how many years the anger, or the numbness, or the busyness has been doing its work, the soft spot is still there, patient and alive and waiting, like a spring that flows even under ice. There is a quality that the Buddhist tradition calls compassion, and it is closely related to this soft spot. Compassion is not pity. It is not feeling sorry for someone from a safe distance. It is the natural response of an open heart to the reality of life. It is what happens when you allow yourself to feel, truly feel, that the person next to you has the same tender spot that you do. That they, too, have built armor. That they, too, have a boy or a girl somewhere inside who still feels everything. A thoughtful writer once put this in words that have stayed with many who have read them. She said that if each person could simply bear their own sorrows honestly, with courage, and without passing them along to others, the sorrow of the entire world would begin to lighten. Not because the difficulties would go away, but because they would no longer be multiplied by our reactions to them. Each person, bearing their own weight with grace, becomes a quiet source of peace in the world. And peace, like kindness, spreads further than we can see. The Buddha once compared kindness to a mother's love for her only child. He said, as a mother would risk her own life to protect her child, her only child, even so should one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. And the starting point for that boundless heart is not somewhere outside you. It is the soft spot. It is the tenderness that was there before the armor. It is the place where you still feel everything, where you still care, where you still want the world to be gentle and good. That place has never left you. And tonight, as you rest, it is resting with you. Let us rest here for a moment. Feel the softness of this breath. There is nothing to protect against right now. Nothing to defend. Only this quiet darkness and the gentle beating of your heart, which has been beating for you faithfully all this time without ever once being asked. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have traveled a good distance together tonight. We began with the spirit we bring to our work, to our daily lives. We explored the freedom that is already ours. We watched the rivers of experience flow by. We made friends with uncertainty. We discovered the gracious heart that can care without clinging. And we found the soft, unbreakable tenderness that lives beneath our armor. Now we come to something deeper still. Something that is difficult to put into words, but that you may already feel stirring in you as you rest here in the quiet. It is the sense that you are not quite as separate as you thought, that the edges of you are softer than you imagined, that you belong to something vast and warm and endlessly alive. There is an ancient teaching, found in many traditions but expressed with particular beauty in Buddhism, that says something very strange and very wonderful. It says that when you become truly still, when you go very deep into the silence that lives beneath all your thoughts and feelings and plans, you will make a surprising discovery. You will discover that the thing you have been calling yourself all these years, the solid, separate, defined person you took yourself to be, is not quite as solid or as separate as you imagined. Now, before we go any further, let us be clear about something. This is not a frightening teaching. It is not a teaching about losing yourself or disappearing or becoming nothing in a cold, empty way. It is, in fact, one of the warmest and most comforting teachings in all of Buddhist wisdom, because what it really says is this: you are not alone. You have never been alone. The boundaries you drew between yourself and the rest of the world were always a little more porous, a little more flexible, a little more imaginary than you thought. And on the other side of those boundaries is not emptiness. It is connection. It is belonging. It is the extraordinary realization that you are part of something so vast and so beautiful that no single word can hold it. Let us begin with a story. There was once a healer, a kind and curious man, who had spent many years studying medicine and the ways of the body. He was also a person of deep spiritual practice, and he had heard tales of hermits who lived alone in caves high in the mountains, spending years in silent meditation, cultivating compassion for all living things. He longed to visit one of these hermits, and after many months of travel and many letters of introduction, he received permission to make the journey. He walked for days along narrow mountain paths. The air grew thin and cold. The valleys fell away beneath him, and the peaks rose white and silent all around. He passed prayer flags strung between rocks, snapping in the wind. He crossed streams so clear he could count the stones on the bottom. At last, after many days of climbing, he came to a small cave in the face of a cliff, high above a valley where clouds drifted below like slow white rivers. It was not much to look at. A low opening in the rock, barely tall enough to stand in. A rough blanket folded neatly on the stone floor. A small fire pit near the entrance with ashes still warm from the morning. The air was thin and sweet, and the only sound was the wind moving through the rock. And sitting just inside the entrance, on a flat stone worn smooth by years of use, was a man who radiated the most extraordinary stillness the healer had ever encountered. The hermit was not doing anything remarkable. He was not floating or glowing or performing any kind of miracle. He was simply sitting. His eyes were half closed. His hands rested in his lap. His breath moved so quietly it was almost invisible. But the quality of his stillness was unlike anything the healer had felt before. It was warm. It was alive. It seemed to fill the cave and spill out into the mountain air and mingle with the wind and the sunlight, the way the fragrance of a flower fills a room without trying, without intending to, without even knowing it is happening. The healer sat down on a stone across from the hermit and waited. He did not want to interrupt. The silence between them was not awkward or empty. It was full, the way a cup is full of water. Comfortable, intimate, as if they had known each other for a very long time. After a while, the hermit opened his eyes fully and looked at the healer with such gentle amusement that the healer almost laughed. It was the look of someone who has been expecting you and is glad you finally arrived. The healer gathered his courage and asked a question. "May I ask about your practice? I have studied many methods. Do you follow the breath? Do you repeat a sacred word? Do you visualize light? What is the technique that has brought you to this remarkable peace?" The hermit looked at him. His eyes were kind and very clear, the way mountain water is clear. He was quiet for a long moment, as if the question were a butterfly that had landed on his hand and he was waiting to see what it would do. Then he smiled. "The world breathes itself," he said. That was all. 4 words. The world breathes itself. The healer sat with those words for a long time. He did not ask any more questions. He looked out at the mountains, at the clouds moving slowly across the wide blue sky, at the tiny wild flowers growing in the cracks of the rock, purple and yellow, bending in the wind. And slowly, very slowly, something in him began to soften. Something he had been holding tightly for years without knowing it. The idea that he was in charge, that he had to make things happen, that his life depended on his effort, his management, his control. He could feel what the hermit meant, not as an idea, not as a philosophy, but as something happening in his own body, right now, in this thin mountain air. He could feel the breath moving through him without his effort or his instruction. He could feel the wind moving across the mountainside in the same unhurried, effortless way. He could feel the clouds drifting, the streams running somewhere below, the grasses bending, the earth slowly turning. All of it breathing, all of it moving, all of it alive, and none of it requiring his direction, none of it waiting for his permission. The world breathes itself. You do not have to breathe. The breath breathes you. The heart beats you. The world lives you, just as it lives the mountains and the rivers and the small wild flowers in the rock. You are not separate from any of it. You never were. You are it, looking at itself with wonder. This is what the Buddhist tradition means by emptiness. And the word is misleading, because in everyday language, empty sounds cold and barren, like an empty room or an empty cupboard. But in the Buddhist sense, emptiness means something entirely different. It means something closer to nothing is separate. Nothing exists on its own, cut off from everything else. Everything is woven into everything. Your breath is the wind, is the ocean, is the clouds, is the rain, is the river, is the tea in your cup, is the warmth in your hands. It is all one thing, moving and changing and flowing, and you are part of it. Not apart from it. Part of it. As natural and as necessary as any other part. Think of a wave in the ocean. For a moment, the wave rises up and has a shape, a height, a direction. It looks like a separate thing. You could point to it and say, that is a wave. But is it really separate from the ocean? Can you draw a line where the wave ends and the ocean begins? Of course not. The wave is the ocean, expressing itself in a particular way for a particular moment. And when the wave subsides, it does not disappear. It simply returns to what it always was. Water, connected, whole. You are like that wave, rising up for a moment in a particular shape, with a particular name and a particular face and a particular life. And all the while, you are the ocean. An ancient text, one of the most treasured teachings in all of Buddhism, describes this in images that are almost like a lullaby. It invites you to think of this world, this life, this experience of being here in a very particular way, not as something heavy and fixed and permanent, but as something lighter than you imagined, more dreamlike, more beautiful for its brevity. Think of a star, it says, appearing in the night sky. How quietly it burns, how far away it is, how long its light has traveled to reach your eyes. And yet there it is, bright and clear, asking nothing, offering everything. Think of a dewdrop on a blade of grass in the early morning. How perfectly round it is. How it holds the whole world in miniature, the sky and the trees and the light, all reflected in that one tiny sphere of water. And how, when the sun warms the air just a little, it vanishes. Not with grief, not with drama, just gently, quietly, back into the air from which it came. Think of a bubble floating on the surface of a stream. Iridescent, beautiful, so light that a breath of wind can carry it, and so brief that the very act of noticing it feels like a gift. Think of a rainbow after a storm, that impossible arc of color, painted on nothing, hung in empty air. How it makes everyone who sees it stop and point and smile, as if beauty itself were reminding us that it can appear anywhere, at any time, from nothing at all. Think of a dream. How vivid it is while you are inside it. How real the faces seem, and the places, and the feelings. And how, when you wake, it dissolves like mist, and you are left holding nothing but a memory and a sense of wonder. This, the ancient text says, is how you should think of this fleeting world. Not with sadness, not with despair, but with the same open-hearted wonder you feel when you see a rainbow or watch a bubble drift across the surface of a pond. And there is nothing sad about this. When you see a rainbow, you do not weep because it will fade. You marvel at it. You stand still and let it fill your eyes. You whisper to the person next to you, "Look, do you see it?" And that is exactly the right response. Not grasping, not mourning, just pure, grateful, open-hearted wonder at the fact that anything exists at all. A great teacher of the last century put this truth into words that have stayed with many people who have encountered them. He said, "Wisdom sees that I am nothing. Love sees that I am everything. And between these two, my life flows." Let those words rest with you for a moment, the way you might let a beautiful piece of music rest in the air after the last note has been played. Wisdom sees that I am nothing. Not nothing as in worthless. Not nothing as in insignificant. But nothing as in nothing separate. Nothing isolated. Nothing cut off from the whole. When you look very deeply into what you are, you cannot find a boundary. You cannot find the place where you end and the rest of the world begins. The air you breathe was breathed by trees. The water in your body fell as rain on mountains you have never seen. The food that became your flesh grew out of soil that was once rock, that was once ocean floor, that was once stardust. You are, quite literally, made of everything. You are the world in a particular shape for a particular time. Nothing more and nothing less. And love sees that I am everything. Because once you realize that you are not separate, once that idea really lands in your body and not just in your mind, something extraordinary happens to your heart. It opens, naturally, without effort, without any technique or practice, the way a hand unclenches when it finally stops grasping. Because if you are not separate from the person next to you, or from the bird singing outside your window, or from the child laughing somewhere down the hall, then their joy is your joy. Their peace is your peace. Their well-being matters to you not because you should care, not because a book told you to, but because you are them. In the deepest, truest, most real sense, you are them, and they are you. And between these two, between the vast, spacious openness of wisdom and the warm, intimate tenderness of love, your life flows, like a river between its banks, like a breath between the inhalation and the exhalation, like a dream that is somehow also completely, undeniably, beautifully real. There was a teacher who was once asked about his upbringing, his background, his identity. People wanted to know where he came from, what tradition he belonged to, what label to put on him. He answered all their questions patiently, but when someone kept pressing, trying to pin him down to a single identity, trying to fit him into a box that he clearly did not fit into, he finally laughed and said, "Well, you know, I am only that on my parents' side." And there is something deeply freeing about that remark, if you let it settle in, because it reminds us that we are not our labels. We are not our conditioning. We are not the stories that were told about us when we were small, or the roles we play in our families and our workplaces, or the identities we carry on our documents. All of those things are real, in a certain sense. They are part of our experience, part of the costume of this particular lifetime. But they are not the whole of who we are. Not even close. Have you noticed how your sense of who you are changes depending on who you are with? With some people, you are the responsible one. With others, you are the playful one. With your family, you might find yourself slipping back into a version of yourself that you thought you had left behind years ago. With a stranger, you are someone else entirely. The self is not fixed. It is fluid. It shifts and adapts and rearranges itself moment by moment, like a cloud that is always changing shape, while still being, undeniably, a cloud. And beneath all those changing shapes, beneath every role and every identity, there is something much larger. Something that cannot be named or contained or pinned down. Something that is connected to everything and is, in its deepest nature, completely free. The Buddha said, just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so also this teaching has one taste, the taste of freedom. And the freedom he was pointing to is exactly this. The freedom of realizing that you are not a small, separate, isolated thing trying to survive in a vast and indifferent universe. You are the universe itself. You are the vastness. Looking out through these particular eyes, breathing through these particular lungs, feeling through this particular, tender, miraculous heart. For a little while, in this particular, unrepeatable, extraordinary form. So tonight, as you lie here, you might let yourself feel this connection. Not as a thought, not as something you need to understand, but as a sensation in your body. Something you can actually feel. Feel the air entering your body, the same air that has touched the tops of trees and the surface of lakes and the faces of people you have never met. Feel it filling your lungs and feel it leaving again, returning to the world it came from, carrying a little bit of you with it, mixing with everything. Your breath and the breath of the world, one breath. Feel the weight of your body on whatever is holding you up. Feel the firmness beneath you, and know that what is holding you up is the earth itself. The same earth that holds the mountains and the forests and the rivers and the cities. The same earth that held your grandparents and their grandparents and everyone who has ever lived. Solid and patient and endlessly generous. Holding everything. Holding you. Feel the warmth of your own skin. The warmth that your body generates simply by being alive, simply by doing the quiet, faithful work of keeping you here. And know that this warmth is a small flame of the same energy that lights the stars and warms the sun and drives the great engines of creation across billions and billions of miles. You are made of the same stuff. You always have been. You belong to this world, not as a visitor, not as a stranger passing through, but as a native, as someone who grew out of this earth the way a flower grows out of the soil, the way a wave rises from the ocean. You are home. You have always been home. You just forgot for a little while, and that is all right. Forgetting and remembering are both part of the journey, the beautiful, tender, surprising journey of being alive. And in this forgetting and in this remembering, there is something incredibly gentle and incredibly kind. Because the world does not punish you for forgetting. It does not scold you or turn its back. It simply goes on breathing and holding you and offering you its beauty, moment after moment after moment, whether you notice or not. And when you do notice, when you pause and feel and say, "Oh, I am part of this. I belong to this. This is my home," the whole world seems to soften around you, as if it has been waiting patiently for you to remember, as if your remembering brings it joy. As an old Zen poem says, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." But perhaps tonight we can say it a different way. Lying quietly, doing nothing, the world breathes itself, and you are breathing with it. You have always been breathing with it, and you always will be. Let us rest with that for a moment. Feel yourself as part of everything, and when you are ready, we will continue together. There is an image that has been passed down through centuries of Buddhist teaching, from one generation to the next, like a candle flame passed carefully from hand to hand in the dark. It is the image of the full moon on a cloudy night. If you have ever been outside on such a night, you know what it looks like. The clouds are moving, always moving, some thick and dark, some thin as silk. They drift across the face of the moon, sometimes covering it completely, sometimes parting just enough to let a shaft of silver light pour through. The sky seems restless. The shadows on the ground shift and change. And yet, behind all that movement, behind all those drifting shapes, the moon itself is perfectly still, perfectly full, perfectly bright. It has not gone anywhere. It has not dimmed. It has not changed at all. It is simply shining, as it always shines, whether the clouds reveal it or not. The ancient teachers loved this image because it describes something true about you. Your awareness, that deep, quiet knowing at the center of your being, is like that moon. Your thoughts are the clouds. Your worries, your moods, your busy plans, your restless nights, all of these are clouds. They move across the surface of your mind, sometimes thick and heavy, sometimes light and barely there. And some nights, the clouds are so dense that you forget the moon exists at all. You look up and see only gray, only dark, only the heavy weight of everything that seems to be in the way. And you think, the light is gone, the peace is gone, the goodness is gone. I have lost it. But you have not lost it. You cannot lose it. It was shining before the clouds arrived. It is shining now, behind them, and it will be shining long after they have drifted on their way. The moon does not struggle with the clouds. It does not fight them or push them away or feel ashamed when they cover its face. It simply goes on being what it is, luminous, steady, patient, whole, and so do you. We have come a long way together tonight. We have explored the spirit we bring to our daily lives, the freedom that was ours before we learned to forget it, the rivers of experience that flow endlessly through us, the peace that lives in uncertainty, the gracious heart that tends without grasping, the soft tenderness beneath our armor, and the vast, intimate belonging that connects us to all things. And now, as we come to the close of this journey, there is one more thing to explore. Perhaps the most beautiful thing of all. It is the question of what happens when the moon comes out from behind the clouds. What happens when you rest so deeply in your own awareness, in your own goodness, in your own quiet freedom, that something begins to shine through you into the world around you? Because that is what happens. Not through effort, not through ambition or strategy or self-improvement, but naturally, the way light naturally fills a room when you open the curtains, the way warmth naturally radiates from a fire, the way a flower naturally offers its fragrance to the air without deciding to, without keeping score, without wondering whether anyone will notice. When you are at peace with yourself, that peace touches everyone around you. When you remember your own freedom, you quietly remind others of theirs. And when you let life be, just as it is, something in the people near you begins to relax. They feel it. They may not know what they are feeling or where it is coming from, but they feel safer, softer, a little more willing to set down their own heavy bags and breathe. This is what the Buddhist tradition means by compassion. Not a grand project, not a heroic rescue, just the natural overflow of a heart that is at rest. The moon does not try to light up the world. It simply shines, and that is enough. Let us explore a story about this, because it carries the feeling of what words alone cannot quite hold. There is an old account of a traveler, a monk, and a scholar who journeyed to a distant country to visit an ancient temple. He had read about this temple for many years. He had seen drawings and descriptions in old books, and he longed to see it with his own eyes. When he finally arrived, after weeks of travel, the temple was not what he expected. It was not a grand building with golden spires and ornate carvings. It was an open hillside, green and quiet, with a few enormous old trees standing like guardians along the edge. The air was warm and very still. Birdsong drifted from somewhere in the branches. And there, carved into a great wall of pale stone at the far end of the hillside, were the largest figures the traveler had ever seen. They were ancient, weathered by centuries of rain and sun. One figure was seated, legs folded, hands resting in the lap, eyes half closed in meditation. The other was reclining, lying on one side with one hand beneath the head, as if resting after a long day. Both were enormous, taller than the tallest trees, and both were carved with a skill and a tenderness that made the stone itself seem alive. The traveler walked slowly across the grass toward them. He had seen many works of art in his life, many temples, many statues, many sacred places, but he had never seen anything like this. He stopped walking and simply stood there, looking up. The faces of the figures were extraordinary. They were not blank or solemn or severe, the way one might expect from something carved in stone so long ago. They were smiling. Not the kind of smile that comes from hearing a joke or the polite smile you offer a stranger. It was something deeper, something quieter, a smile that seemed to hold everything in the world within it, joy and sorrow, beauty and struggle, the long turning of the seasons, all of it held in that one gentle, steady expression. The traveler later tried to describe what he saw in those faces, and what he wrote has stayed with many people over the years. He said the figures seemed filled with every possibility and rejecting nothing. Their smiles were not smiles of escape, not smiles that said, "I have risen above it all. I have left the world behind." They were smiles that said, "I have seen it all, every bit of it. The wonder and the difficulty and the strangeness and the grace. And I am at peace with what I have seen. Not because it is perfect, but because it is real. And reality, when you stop fighting it, turns out to be far more beautiful than any dream you could put in its place." The traveler stood on that green hillside for a very long time. He did not take notes. He did not analyze what he was seeing. He simply let the stillness of those ancient faces wash over him, the way warm water washes over tired hands. And when he finally walked away, he felt different. Not because he had learned something new, but because something had been confirmed, something he had always suspected but had never quite been able to prove. That peace is real, that the human heart, when it lets go of its struggle, naturally comes to rest in a place of such profound kindness that it can hold the entire world without flinching. That is what the moon looks like when the clouds finally part. There is an ancient story from the Buddhist tradition about what happened when the first teacher, the Buddha himself, opened his eyes after his long meditation beneath the tree and looked out at the world for the first time with the eyes of one who is fully awake. The story says that what he saw moved him beyond words. He saw beings everywhere, in every direction, longing to be happy, longing to be free, longing to be loved. And yet, so many of them were confused. They were doing the very things that kept them trapped, grasping at what they could not hold, running from what they could not escape, building walls around the very hearts that needed to breathe. Not because they were foolish, but because they were tender and they did not know what else to do. And as the awakened one looked out across this world, the story says, he was so moved by what he saw that his eyes filled with tears. Not tears of despair, not tears of frustration or hopelessness, but tears of the deepest, most boundless compassion. The kind of tears that come when your heart is so full it simply overflows. The way the sky overflows with rain when it has gathered all the moisture it can hold. And the story says that where his tears touched the earth, something grew. Not a flower, not a tree, but a presence. A warm, living presence of compassion itself, as if the earth received his tears and gave something back. As if the whole world responded to that love by generating more of it. As if compassion, once it begins to flow, cannot be stopped. It spreads. It multiplies. It calls forth more compassion from everything it touches, the way one candle lights another without losing any of its own flame. This is a beautiful image to carry with you as you rest tonight, because it tells you something important about the nature of love. Love is not a finite resource. It is not something you can use up or run out of. The more you give, the more there is. The more your heart opens, the more room it has. And the tears you shed, the ones that come from the deepest, most honest place in you, are not a sign of weakness. They are seeds. They are the beginning of something. They are compassion, planting itself in the world, one drop at a time. And this brings us, gently, to the last thing I want to share with you tonight. There is a story about a traveler who visited a land where, for complicated and painful reasons, a great wall had been built between two communities. It was an enormous wall, tall and grey and harsh, stretching for miles across what had once been open countryside. On one side, olive groves had been uprooted to make room for it. Gardens had been divided. Neighbors who had once shared meals now lived on opposite sides of a barrier they could not cross. It was a sorrowful thing to see. And yet, when the traveler walked along the base of this wall, something caught his eye. Someone, no one knew who, had painted a picture on the grey concrete. It was large, stretching many feet across, vivid, with colour against the dull stone. It was the image of a dove, a simple, white dove, the ancient symbol of peace. But this dove was painted wearing a small vest, the kind you might wear for protection in a dangerous place. And in its beak, held gently and firmly, was an olive branch. The traveller stood in front of this painting for a long time, There was a small car parked nearby, and by comparison you could see just how enormous the image was. 20 feet across, perhaps more. A dove of peace, dressed for a world that is not yet peaceful, carrying the oldest symbol of hope in its mouth. Not angry, not defeated, not pretending the wall was not there, just shining, quietly, stubbornly, beautifully shining, the way the moon shines behind clouds, the way a candle shines in a window on a dark night. And the traveler understood something in that moment that all the teachings and all the books had been trying to tell him for years. Freedom is not about the absence of difficulty. It is not about living in a world where walls do not exist and storms never come and hearts are never heavy. Freedom is the light that shines anyway. It is the dove that carries the olive branch anyway. It is the gardener who plants seeds the morning after the storm. It is the elder who looks at a struggling young person and says, "You are extraordinary," and means it. Freedom is the moon that goes on shining, whether the clouds are thin or thick, whether the night is short or long, whether anyone is looking up or not. It shines because that is its nature. And your nature, the deepest truth of who you are, is exactly the same. The Buddha said, "Free yourself. Be a light unto the world." Not by trying harder, not by being perfect, not by waiting until all your problems are resolved and all your fears have been conquered and all the walls have come down. But now, right now, just as you are, with all your tender imperfections, with all your beautiful contradictions, with all the clouds that still drift across the face of your particular moon. You are the light. You have always been the light. And the world needs your light, not someday, not when you are ready, but now. In whatever small, quiet, ordinary way you can offer it. A kind word, a moment of patience, a willingness to listen, a refusal to give up on love, even when love is hard. An olive branch, held gently in the beak, carried forward into whatever comes next. Let us explore one more small story before we rest. There was once an old woman who lived in a village by the sea. She was not famous. She was not wealthy. She was not a teacher or a healer or a leader of any kind. She was simply a woman who had lived a long time and paid attention. Every evening, as the sun went down, she would walk to the end of the stone pier that stretched out into the harbor, and she would light a small lantern and set it on the railing. A neighbor once asked her why she did this. "The harbor has a lighthouse," the neighbor said. "The ships can see it from miles away. What good is one small lantern?" The old woman smiled. "The lighthouse shows them where the harbor is," she said. "My lantern shows them that someone is glad they are coming home." And every evening, without fail, in rain and wind and the last soft light of summer, her lantern burned at the end of the pier. A tiny, steady flame. A light that said, "I am here. You are welcome. You are not alone." This is what it means to let your life shine. Not to compete with the lighthouse. Not to illuminate the whole harbor, but to offer your small, steady flame to the world, night after night, simply because it is yours to give. Simply because someone somewhere might need to see it. Simply because that is what candles do. They burn. They give light. And they never ask whether the light is enough. It is always enough. The Buddha said, "However many holy words you read, however many you speak, what good will they do you if you do not act on them?" And acting on them does not mean grand gestures. It means this: lighting your lantern, setting it on the railing, and trusting that the light will find its way to whoever needs it most. So here, at the end of this gentle evening together, there is nothing more to learn, nothing more to understand, nothing more to do. Only this: the moon is shining. Your moon, the one that has been shining since the very beginning, through every cloud, every storm, every long and difficult night. It is shining now, in this moment, as you rest. And you do not need to do anything with that light tonight. You do not need to direct it, or focus it, or share it, or even think about it. It will do what light does. It will shine on its own. All you need to do is rest. Let the clouds drift. Let the breath breathe itself. Let the heart beat its quiet, faithful rhythm. Let the world hold you the way it has always held you, whether you noticed or not. You are part of something vast and kind and endlessly alive. And within that vastness, your small, particular, irreplaceable light matters more than you will ever know. A Zen verse says, 10,000 flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, snow in winter. If your mind is not clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. And this is the best season. Right now, this quiet moment, this soft breath, this gentle darkness, this moon, your moon, shining behind whatever clouds may come. Let it shine. Let it be. And let yourself rest. Let us pause here, one last time. Feel yourself breathing. Feel yourself held by the earth, by the night, by the kindness of simply being alive. And when you are ready, we will close together. And so we come to the end of our time together tonight. Or perhaps not the end, but a gentle pause. Because these teachings do not stop when the words stop. They live in you. They have always lived in you. Tonight was simply a remembering. We explored the cathedral that every life can be, when we bring our full hearts to whatever is before us. We remembered that freedom is not something we earn, but something we already carry, sewn into the very lining of our being. We watched the 5 rivers of experience flow by and discovered the stillness that watches with us. We made friends with uncertainty and found that it is not so frightening after all. We tended the garden of the gracious heart, learning to care without clinging. We found the soft, unbreakable tenderness beneath our armor. We felt the vast belonging that connects us to the mountains, the rivers, the stars, and to one another. And we saw the moon, our moon, shining steadily behind whatever clouds may come. You do not need to hold on to any of this. It is already yours. It always was. The Buddha once said, "You yourself must walk the path. But you do not walk it alone. And you are not alone tonight. You are held by the same ancient kindness that holds the tides and turns the seasons and grows the wildflowers between the stones. You are part of everything, and everything is glad you are here. So let the breath carry you now. Let the quiet carry you. Let the gentle darkness wrap around you like the softest blanket in the world. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to figure out. Only rest, only peace, only this beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary moment of being alive. Let it be. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.